Welcome to the Crackin Backs Podcast. Today, we are thrilled to have Dr. Jonny Bowden, a renowned expert in nutrition and longevity. In this episode, Dr. Bowden reveals the top strategies to power up your immune system ahead of flu, COVID, and cold season without relying on vaccines. From essential dietary tweaks and breakthrough genetics testing to the role of exercise and natural remedies, we're uncovering some practical tools to help you stay strong all season long. Plus, don't miss the insights on living up to 100, inspired by the wisdom of the Blue Zones. Hey, let's get started.
All right, man. We got our buddy back, Dr. Jonny Bowden, which a lot of my friends are gonna be jealous. I get to talk to him twice. So I'm really excited for you.
What was that again? Could you
You
do
like that? I'm from
What?
SoCal, baby.
Okay,
I can do that.
That's a Compton thing, though.
Yeah, shut up. With the reason we wanted Dr. Bowden back is we got the flu and cold season coming around, or some people call it the COVID and flu season coming around. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get people prepared. You're starting to read articles about vaccines. You're starting reading articles about prepare, all that kind of stuff. So, hey, we got to jump right in and get people prepared, but on a more natural standpoint. So we have back our nutritionist, Dr. Jonny Bowden, who's very famous with all his books he's written. And we want to kind of talk to people about strategies of how to get people healthy so they have a great holiday season. So welcome back, Dr. Bowden.
Very happy to be here. Spencer.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Terry, good to see you as always.
All right. So let's talk about some of the most effective nutritional strategies to boost your immune system. Our immune system is how we fight our colds. So can you talk about kind of the strategies you start employing around the time of the season changing, going from summer to fall to winter? And can you kind of bring us into that so we can get this conversation started?
Yeah, but I'd like to first just comment about the idea of boosting our immunity.
Perfect.
We really can't do that. It's kind of a misnomer. You don't even want to boost your immune system. If you boosted your immune system so it was constantly on high alert, you'd have autoimmune disease. Huh. What we want is to get the you-know-what out of the way of our immune system so it can function optimally. We don't need to put it on speed. We just need to get it off of off of slowdown drugs. And what are the slowdown drugs for the immune system? Inflammation, oxidation, mitochondrial dysfunction. So what we really need to do when we're talking about, boosting your immune system is cleaning it up and getting all of these things that slow it down out of the equation. Now, I understand what people mean when they say boost their immune system. When the pandemic started, every nutritionist and doctor in the country got a million questions. What can I take? How can I boost it? What we mean is, how can we get it better in fighting shape? And I don't know how many YouTube videos with a list of supplements, which I'm going to tell you what they are right now. But I do want to just give the context for that you're not just necessarily taking things to boost it. What you're doing is to try to give it the fuel it needs to just function normally. And that's the problem. When it's not functioning normally, that's when you feel run down. That's why any little opportunistic virus or bacteria gets a hold. And we all know from ever having worked in an office or any kind of environment, something's going around. You've ever heard, like, oh, something's going around. He's out with something. Some people are out for 2 weeks and some people are out for 2 days. Yeah. Why is that? So we have to look at it. It's not all about the virus. It's not all about let's keep the virus out no matter what, which was the policy at COVID. It's also about the host, the receiver, the person who has to deal with those stresses. You can't stop the world from being stressful. You can deal with your response to the stress. It's like an old Chinese proverb. You can't repave the road in the world, but you can wear more comfortable shoes. So let's talk about how we can wear more comfortable shoes and get our immune system. And then the second thing I want to say, I know I'm taking you far off course here.
No,
the second thing I want to say is, whenever I'm asked about this, I'm going, oh, cold and flu season, what should we do differently? And my answer for me, I don't always say this because I go on TV all the time and people want to know, like, what do you take? What do you do? It's cold season. How do you keep your family healthy? We're going to talk about that. I agree to all that. But you know what I do differently in cold and flu season?
What's that?
Nothing. Nothing. Let me tell you why. Every one of these supplements I'm going to tell you about, I take every day. Every one of these activities that we might talk about that might be helpful to immunity and to general health, I do 12 months a year. So I don't see this as a special strategy. I say, okay, I get that most people don't take the 58 vitamins and supplements. I know that's crazy. I know that's way out of the Overton window for most people. But what I'm saying is that, well, you don't need vitamin C all year round. You don't need zinc all year round. You can't use NAC all year round. Of course you can. So I'm more of the belief, kind of like Floyd Mayweather, the boxer.
Yeah.
You know, who I despise as a human. I mean, everything about him I just dislike. However, you know what he did? He never got out of shape. Right. There was none of this like, oh, I'm in the off season. No. He trained 12 months a year. Now, one could argue that it's good to take some time off and it's good to cycle and all that. But what I want people to start to think about is being healthy all year long. Yeah. In which case, cold and flu season is like, oh my God. No, it's not. Oh my God. It's like, okay, I got this. Yeah. So let's talk about how I got this. So the nutrients my go-tos for immunity and for immune health, for this health of the immune system, always start with vitamin D. Actually, there's no hierarchy here. Vitamin D is like, it's like a thermostat for the immune system. You know, it tells you if it's going too high, too active. It tells you if it's going too low. It just keeps it right where it's supposed to go. Nothing works right without vitamin D. It's like my foundational supplement. And even during COVID, when I was talking to all these people who don't take vitamins, don't do anything, they said, what's one thing I can do? Vitamin D.
Great.
And that would be followed by C, zinc. I'm a big fan of NAC, N-acetylcysteine, which is a powerful it has two things that you need to know about it. One is it's a powerful antioxidant that has an affinity for the upper respiratory system. The second thing you need to know about it is that it stimulates the making of glutathione in the body, which is the body's most powerful master antioxidant. And they've been trying for as long as I've been in the field, over 30 years, to get an oral glutathione that you can absorb. And I've heard rumors that there are some that might actually be better absorbed orally, but that's always been a challenge. It's much better if you can do it to get your body to make it. And what are the precursors to glutathione? Two things: NAC, whey protein. So another immunity support nutrient that no one thinks about. I'll bet you guys can't guess this. You'll never guess it. Melatonin.
Really?
Melatonin is not only a powerful antioxidant, but it is just turbo fuel for the immune system. So that's another one that a lot of people don't think about. Now,
what doses are you talking about?
What?
What doses are you talking about?
I don't know that that's been studied, and I don't have it top of mind to know exactly what the dosage, but the substance itself functions that way. You know, I mean, I've seen dosages as low as 0.3 milligrams and as high as 20 milligrams. I mean, it's a huge range there. And there's a lot of controversy about what the best dosage, but people can experiment with it. The point is, it's quite good for immunity as well as an antioxidant. Now, here's one of the emergency cocktails. Like, somebody gets sick in my family. Michelle gets sick. I almost always suggest vitamin A in high dosages for 3 days. And I learned this, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago from Anne Louise Gittleman. She was like the first lady of nutrition, very, very smart woman. She had a lot of great ideas. And she would do the cocktail of like maybe 50,000 or 30,000 IUs of vitamin A 3 days in a row, along with zinc, along with we haven't talked about botanicals or anything like that, but astragalus. And that's kind of like a stack, where you're kind of loading up on that stuff. I would not take vitamin A in high dosages for a long time, but you can do 3 days of it. And it gives a nice little boost, if you will. And again, I'm using that word advisedly, but it gives a nice little pop to the immune system and to its ability to do its work. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, what have I left out? Elderberry. So one of my go-tos in cold and flu season, and I know this because I used to do morning TV shows all the time, and this part of the year, September, October, they would always do, when we come back, we're going to talk to nutrition mythbuster Jonny Bowden about how to keep your family healthy. And I'd have a table full of stuff, and I know we're going to probably talk about foods. And in there, I would have a over-the-counter product, which I do not sell, represent, or make any money on. They don't even know me. Sambucol. Sambucol is this terrific elderberry extract. It actually has research on it. It will not stop colds. It will not end colds, but it will shorten the duration and shorten the severity of symptoms. And that's often all you can do. Nobody has figured out how to stop the cold. But wouldn't it be better if instead of being out for 7 days, you're out for 3? And that's what the research showed on Sambucol. So I would definitely add elderberry. And I will admit, I don't necessarily take elderberry every single day. That's a kind of one that keep around for this season. So I'll modify what I said in the beginning. I don't do all of these all the time, but elderberry is one that I would definitely add into the stack at this time of year.
Yeah, got that. I got elderberry. I love that stuff. I wanted to add, you actually started to mention, now that's a great lineup of supplements that people can adhere to. What about foods? What should they stay away from? What should they?
Again, Spencer, to me, it's the same prescription. I'm going to say sugar and vegetable oil, but what? You're going to eat those the other 10 months of the year? I don't think anybody's been eating that stuff ever.
Right.
So yes, of course, you want to get the most inflammatory things in the American diet out of the diet during this time, because one of the accompaniments of every virus we're talking about, every bacteria, every infection is inflammation. So you don't need to be adding to the fire with more inflammatory food. So you want to get sugar, ultra-processed food, as much processed food as you can out of your diet. Get rid of the vegetable oils. My beloved mentor in nutrition, the great Robert Crown, who taught half the people that are out there that we all know about, he died. Robert used to say, hey, if you want to kill somebody, I got a great scheme for you. You should sneak into their kitchen. This is back in 1998 when nobody was talking about it. To sneak into their kitchen, take out all their beef tallow and lard and all of those things and replace it with sunflower oil, safflower oil, corn oil, and soybean oil. They'll be dead. And it was an exaggeration, but he was onto this thing about seed oils, vegetable oils, so-called vegetable oils. And it's really one of the big mythologies that when I talk about being a nutrition mythbuster, that's one of the first things we've all been taught: get rid of the animal fats and go to the vegetable oils. They're really good for you. No, they're not good for you at all. And so I would definitely cut back on all those inflammatory, high omega-6, low omega-3 cooking oils that we use every single day. Way too much.
Are you good with ghee?
Of course.
Yeah, I thought so. All right, cool.
Are you kidding?
Make sure. I just started using all
that. So yeah, there are. I'm going to use immune boosting just as a conversational kind of shorthand, but I already explained why I don't really think boosting is the right word. But there are foods. Himalayan tartrate buckwheat flour is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Jeff Bland makes it, and Big Bold Health. Ginger, turmeric, lemon. I mean, these are the ones people kind of are hip to this by now because there's ginger shots everywhere and beet juice. But the ginger, turmeric, and garlic and lemon, they're really, really powerful additions. And again, I think to try to get those in the diet as often as possible. I put ginger in my freshly made juice. I put lemon with the peel in my freshly made juice. When I'm not making fresh juice, I'll just, add some to a tea or whatever. I mean, but you want to get that stuff in there because it's really, really good. Garlic is a wonderful immunity food.
Yeah. Jonny, what oils should people cook with?
I like avocado oil, coconut oil, ghee, macadamia nut oil. And believe it or not, here, let's bust another myth on olive oil. So extra virgin olive oil is a medicinal food.
Really?
I have had 2 different cardiologists, Stephen Sinatra, who wrote The Great Cholesterol Myth with me, and Dr. Douglas Triffin, who's head of the lipid clinic at Scripps. Both recommend a 1/4 cup of olive oil a day, 4 tablespoons of olive oil a day as medicine. I was talking to Dr. Triffin just the other day, and he was just giving me a list of the research on what olive oil does, cognitive, longer lives. I mean, it protects against so many things, and this is in the research. This is not made up. So olive oil is a fantastic food for immunity and for any other time. I keep a bottle of it right on the counter and literally swig it every day. It's not hard to do.
So let me ask you, some of these, oils.
Oh, I didn't finish. You asked me about cooking. I'm so sorry. Before you go, please hold that thought. Okay. So the myth is that you can't cook with olive oil.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Okay.
Does it change with the heat?
Huh?
Does it change with heat?
Well, heat
destroys.
Heat generally it's not across the board. There are some vegetables that you actually absorb better if you steam them, like broccoli. And we have to break the cell walls down because they're just, it's tough. But olive oil comes in regular olive oil, virgin olive oil, and extra virgin oil. You don't want to cook with extra virgin. That's the one you want to drink and you want to spriddle on salads and you want to really use like that. But as you go down in the virgin scale, right, from regular to virgin as you go down, you lose some, not many, but some of the polyphenols and antioxidants and all the stuff that's in the olive oil, but you gain the ability to put it at heat a little bit. It's a little hardier. So you can actually cook with olive oil or virgin olive oil. Just keep it at a relatively low. I mean, you can saute with it. I put it on the pan sometimes to just before I make a burger, just to, and even if you were to use extra virgin olive oil, which you probably don't want to cook with that. It's certainly not at high heat. But even if you were, and I got this from some actual olive oil manufacturers from Italy. And I was invited to an olive grove, and they showed how they actually press it and how they taste it. And these old guys that have been doing it for 75 years, they come in and they talk to you. But what I learned there was that even if you cook with extra virgin olive and you lose 20% of the powerful polyphenols, you're still so far ahead of the game in terms of what's in there that you're still ahead of the game.
That's cool.
So you can use olive oil for certain cooking applications. Avocado has a very high smoke point. You can use that for everything. Macadamia nut oil has a very high smoke point. It's kind of an olive oil on steroids in terms of being able to stand up to heat. Coconut oil, I'm a big fan of.
I am going to eject for a second because I feel a little ignorant over here. I haven't heard of ghee. Talk about this ghee. Last time I heard about ghee is something I wore on a karate mat. Yeah. So
it's clarified. What's called clarified butter.
Okay.
If you melt the butter and you take out all the solids, what's left is ghee.
Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Spence.
No, that was great, man.
And speaking of ghee, I mean, ghee comes from butter. Butter is one of my favorite fats to cook with and to eat.
Real butter, yeah.
And we use the Irish butter that.
That's because it's grass fed. You really do want all of your animal products to come from grass-fed cows, humanely treated grass-fed cows. It's a different animal.
Got it.
Regenerative farming, we could get into that. But in terms of foods, that's kind of I think that's the basic menu. I'd make sure to get a lot of omega-3s, which I think I try to do all year round anyway, but they're one of the most anti-inflammatory molecules on earth. So if you're worried about inflammation, that's something that accompanies all of these. You can't really have a cold or a flu or cough without inflammation. I mean, everybody experiences it. It's even something that you can experience. You can see the swelling and the inflammation. And of course, there's the silent inflammation, which you don't experience, which is what kills us. So we really want as many foods, nutrients, botanicals to be anti-inflammatory as possible. We want to load up on that.
So a lot of people are talking now, and in general, we hear this: take these vitamins, take these supplements. Some people may be allergic to some of these supplements. How have you seen the evolution of testing, nutritional testing come around, so we can actually, as physicians or nutritionists, get more specific to help each person as an individual?
Well, it's a great question, and it's a complex question because there's all kinds of testing. There's nutrient deficient tests. You can actually find out if you're deficient in a nutrient. There's genetic testing, which maybe we'll get into a little bit later, which is a whole other area. In terms of like being allergic to or not a vitamin or nutrient not working, I am a big fan of just plain old experimentation. I've had clients over the years who want to do these very expensive food allergy tests. And I was trained on them. I know there's a lot of them, and some of them are the ALCAT. There's all these different tests that people use. And personally, I'm going to get pushed back on this maybe, but I have not found them terribly useful. I've seen a lot of cases where people come back and say, "This thing says I'm totally allergic to pineapple. I don't even eat pineapple." And this has been explained to me by people who really understand this stuff, like the same elements in pineapple are the same elements in silicone. And so maybe it's silicone, but it's coming up as pineapple. You really have to know your stuff to be able to interpret this stuff. And generally, it's a little vague. If you send your blood test to 3 different food allergy testing labs, you may get very different results, which is also true with a lot of, legitimate tests that everybody accepts. You send for a calcium score can be different depending on the 2 labs that you go to. So certainly the food allergy tests can be. I just feel that, a plain old elimination diet or a rotation diet, you can't beat that. You basically you start with like maybe the big the big 7 in terms of food allergens, the things that have the most number of people who are triggered by them, which would be what? Wheat, corn, soy, citrus, eggs, seafood, the usual suspects. And you take a couple of them out for a couple of weeks and you notice how you feel. You're an N of 1. Remember, we're not trying to do science and publish it in the New England Journal of Medicine. We're trying to figure out what works for us. So how do you figure out what works for you? You experiment. You take this out and say, I stopped dairy for a few weeks. God, all my mucus. I'm a big dairy lover, so I'm just saying that many people will try something like that and go, I had no idea how good I feel off of wheat. Just try it for a couple of weeks. Now, if you don't notice anything different, that's probably not one of the things that you're sensitive to.
Yeah. So
you mentioned genetic testing. What's that?
So genetic testing is oh my God, where do we even start? So we start with 23andMe or Ancestry.com. Yeah. So everybody knows what those are, right? They give you a lot of genetic information. Usually for the purpose in those tests of like finding long lost relatives and things. I have no idea why people want to do that. It's not something I'm interested in, but okay. But when we talk about it in the health space, we're talking about genes that let's back up and talk about how important genes are or are not. I think before we even talk about what we're testing, we need to contextualize it. So it's really important that people know that genetics loads the gun, but it doesn't pull the trigger.
Wow, that's good.
I can only think of 2 diseases, and I'm sure there are more, but they're really not more than a handful. Cystic fibrosis and Huntington's chorea that are 1 gene diseases. You get that gene, sorry, bad luck at the door, you're getting that disease. That's it. We don't have a diabetes gene. We don't have a heart disease gene. We have a confluence of genes that taken together may paint a picture of vulnerability in the presence of. Here's the best way I can explain how genes work. Let's say I, Jonny Bowden, have a gene that would determine how I will react to cigarette smoke. And I am, we all know that there's people who live to 100, they smoke 2 packs of Camels a day. It doesn't seem to get them. And there are other people who don't. So let's say I'm one of the ones who ain't going to smoke 2 packs of Camels a day. I'm going to smoke, I'm getting lung cancer. That's my gene. Guess what happens if I don't smoke? Nothing. The gene doesn't give me lung cancer. The gene says, you got to be careful because if you smoke, you are more likely to get lung cancer than Terry and Spencer. They're likelihoods. They are not fait accompli. You got to look at them a little bit like the Cosmopolitan magazine astrology guide. It's like, you're a Sagittarius. Today, probably this is going to happen if you don't do anything about it.
Wait. There's an astrology guide in that magazine?
But anyway, what I'm getting at is, so here's a couple of places where genetic testing could really make a difference. So again, I do want people to understand that these are only indicators of risk. They are not, you're getting this thing. There's no way to avoid it. I can think of 2 genes that would be worthwhile that we could discuss that would be cleared. One of them is the NP21 gene, and this is a very interesting gene. My hardcore science buddies will kill me for this oversimplification, but it's kind of an inflammation gene. So the way it was explained to me by one of the top biogeneticists in Canada was, this is like you buy a frying pan with a Teflon cover. And some Teflon frying pans have a nice thick Teflon coating and you could pretty much do anything with them and no problems. Others have a few scratches in them. And then some look like they came from China and they've been used for a year and anything you put in there is going to stick. Okay, that's the NP21 gene. So if you have a bad copy of that or 2 copies, you have a lot of scratches on your Teflon. And that means you are going to respond to inflammatory substances in the arteries in not such a good, you're more likely to have problems with inflammatory substances. So you want to be really careful about vegetable oil and sugar and cigarette smoke and all, because they are likely to get through. Your coating ain't that strong. And that's a gene that would be useful to know. Now, you might argue, well, okay, so stay away from inflammatory things, but I think we should stay away from inflammatory things whether we have that gene or not. But that's something you can point to a client and say, look, you are very susceptible to inflammation because you've got this bad copy of the gene. Here's another example, the MTHFR gene. That is a methylation gene. Many of the molecules in our body have to be methylated. We don't even have to go into what that means. I'm not even sure I could give you the perfect biochemical explanation of it right now, but basically it's a process that happens to molecules and it's very, very necessary. And if you don't methylate well, there is an actionable thing that you can do, and that is to make sure that you're taking the methylated version of vitamin B12, methylfolate, methylated version of these B vitamins, because you ain't methylating very well. And you don't even need to understand methylation. Just know it's a process and your body needs to do it. And if you have a gene that says, I don't do this so good, you got to make some compensations in your supplement and food program. So those are 2 places. And, you know, genetic testing is this long. We do it at the Institute, right, with the MaxGen report. And it gives you massive amount of information. But people shouldn't be intimidated by this idea. It's great data collection for you to understand like your strengths and weaknesses. It's just like if you were in an athletic thing and the coach was like, let me see he's really good at running. He's not so good at throwing. You kind of have some idea of the baseline, and then you know what you need to work on, or what you need to work on. So I think that genetic testing can be a very, very, obviously I do because we do it, very valuable addition, but it isn't the whole picture. It's just something to be incorporated, to know where the weaknesses are, to know what you might want to do as a result. You know, some people take the famous case is Angelina Jolie, who had 2 copies of the BRCA gene, which is the breast cancer gene, and said, listen, I'm not taking any chances. I'm having a double mastectomy. I think it's an extreme reaction to that. But I mean, no judgment, but I think that, you know, but that is certainly what happened there. And she just didn't want to, the odds were very great that she would get breast cancer. She didn't want to wait and then have to deal with, she just, let's get rid of it and not have to worry about it.
Gosh. Hey, Johnny, you mentioned something earlier, you and Terry were mentioning about dosages, but I think your thoughts on, I mean, not everybody is the same.
Of course.
And so, you know, what might be on the label that would be good for Terry to take every day or me to take less or more or something. But is that safe to say that not all dosages?
I think that is the foundational mantra for functional medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
And everything has to be personalized.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where you come in, because you evaluate people's situation, you know,
I help people figure out what might be a good strategy for them.
I love it. I have the most elementary question.
Please, there are no elements.
I
they all turn out to be very, you know, foundational and important. The ones that we think are not important questions. Go ahead.
I almost said the most stupid question, but I didn't want to.
It's not. And also, by the way, for anybody who ever is in a seminar or webinar or whatever and thinks they have a stupid question, let me assure you with 100% certainty there are 20 other people in the class that have that same question and are afraid to ask it. So please ask it. It gives us.
Of course, we're going to let Spencer ask the question. So
yeah, here we go. Your comments on exercise and immune system.
Well, it's a great question. I just wrote a blog on this for Brain MD, as a matter of fact, exercise for whole body wellness. One of the things that exercise does that nobody talks about that is possibly, exercise does so many good things, it's very hard to rank them, but this is in the top 3. People think about exercise as a weight loss strategy. Not effective. They think about it as a way of keeping weight off. Very effective. They think of it as a way of burning calories or feeling better or lowering the risk for depression or lowering the risk for cancer, all of which it does. Yes, all true. The thing that people don't think about is the best way to regenerate mitochondria. What are mitochondria? They are the little organelles in the cells that are the energy production factories. And in the mitochondria, everything good that you want to happen happens. Detoxification, fat burning. It's a very long list. The mitochondria there are some doctors in functional medicine who actually believe mitochondrial dysfunction is at the root of every disease in the world. So if your mitochondria aren't working well, they can't detoxify. They can't burn fat. They're just sluggish and you're not going to be in good health. And exercise is a mitochondrial rejuvenation program. and that I think is probably, it's got to be the top 3 of things that exercise does. So you are literally like rejuvenating one of the most important organelles in the cell that you rely on for just about everything.
Thank you for that. Yeah, exercise is not something you would hear a lot of medical doctors suggest to their patients because they don't exercise themselves. So anyway, I'm
And I
glad you made
doubt
that.
that all of them, I'll bet you if you surveyed the average doctor in America, no disrespect intended, but they don't learn this stuff, and asked them about the connection between exercise and mitochondria, most of them would stare at you.
Yeah, agreed. I thought you were going to say most of them don't exercise.
I mean, that's changing to some extent. I'm starting to see, there's a lot of, I'm starting to see,
more.
You take an Andrew Huberman
Mm-hmm.
and his colleagues at Stanford, Andy Galpin. These are exercise physiologists that are in amazing. I mean, they walk the walk and practice what they're. So you're seeing that more now these days. But I agree with you. The average doctor, they used to smoke during.
I know.
40 years ago.
And that's a whole nother story.
Story.
So Jonny, we're hearing a lot about long COVID. It's that time past that people are still getting. It's funny when you hear. Not funny. I shouldn't say this funny, but you hear people say that they caught COVID. I know somebody 2 weeks ago that got it, and I'm thinking to myself, people are still getting this.
Is that still a thing? Obviously, it still is a thing.
But
yes.
But they're now having this discussion that you're reading about more about long COVID.
I've been hearing about that from the beginning, and I actually have a very close friend and one of the top nutritionists in the country who has long COVID and has had it for a couple of years. And there's no debating with him about this stuff because he experienced near death from COVID, and he has had considerable lingering symptoms for years after. There's no single test for long COVID. What there is a lot of ancillary tests that can give you a hint of where you might be able to correct some things. One of which would be comprehensive blood panel. You start with that. You could do a CBC, a complete blood count. Definitely nutrient deficiency tests might be useful there because you certainly, if you're lacking, your vitamin D levels are 29, dude. I mean, start with that. Yeah. So we do want to know what those are. We want to know maybe inflammatory markers might be good. Are your interleukin-6 levels sky high? Are your CRP 5.0? I mean, that's a lot of inflammation. So that you can treat the inflammation, not treating the long COVID, but you're treating these things that tend to show up when people say they have long COVID or are experiencing long COVID: inflammation, oxidation, all of the usual suspects, nutrient deficiencies, hormone assessments. You want to look at all the things that make people healthy or unhealthy as much as we can. Even a pulmonary function test might be useful. So I think there's a lot. None of those are the long. You're positive for long COVID. That doesn't happen. No. But you can look at, this circumstance is not ideal. This circumstance could use a little juggling. This one could use a little improvement. That kind of stuff you can do.
Jonny, I gotta take a moment to just compliment you on your memory recall of some of these things and how fluid it comes, and I don't want to say at your age, but at your age.
I've got an earpiece. I've got a CIA guy feeding me this information. You just don't see it. I'm just very good at it.
You know what? I stopped using the word old. I use the word classic. If you think about it, people take care of their classic cars really good. They just don't take care of their old cars. They treat their old cars like crap, but they keep their classic cars fantastic.
I like that, Gary.
Yeah, so, Jonny, you're a classic. Spencer, you're a classic. I'm still a new one trying to get to your level.
Jeez, I'm so impressed with how fluid everything is in your memory and
yeah.
I don't experience it that way because I am constantly forgetting things that I always knew. That if you don't use this on a regular basis, it's not top of mind. I mean, there's stuff people ask me that I used to really know well, Oh,
Yeah.
I don't remember any of that. I mean, it comes back really quick. I just need, to remind. But if I haven't used it, talked to clients about it, lectured about it, or written about it in 10 years, sorry, even if it's in a book of mine, I got to go back and check what it is. That kind of memory I do not have. But I talk about diabetes and insulin resistance and heart disease almost every day. And so this stuff is pretty, top of mind, but you could easily stump me on something that I haven't looked at in a few years. So I don't want to pretend to have some secret to memory, because God knows.
It's good though. But it's funny. I was prompted to read 2 articles on forgetfulness and talking to yourself. And these were actually a New York Times and a Wall Street Journal article that I thought was really interesting, because I experienced both of those 2 things. And as we get older, the forgetfulness thing is actually quite common, because we have so much information that we've accumulated over a lifetime. The talking to yourself thing, I go, man, I needed to read about that. And that's another thing. And sometimes we are in such deep thought that we actually respond out loud to each other.
You mean everybody doesn't do that?
Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. All right, back to nutrition and immunity. But is there?
I do have one thing. I don't know how much time we have, but
yeah,
I want to make sure I have time for my major message on this. So it's after we do all the questions, just give me a couple of minutes to tell you what the best thing that you can do for your immune system and for your health.
Oh, very good. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, do you want to talk about it now, or you want to leave that as the crescendo to the very end?
No. I can talk about it now.
All right.
I'm actually giving the keynote address to the National Association of Nutrition Professionals next year in May.
Oh,
and it's going to be on this subject.
That's fantastic.
What really makes people healthy and happy. All right. So let me set it up for you.
Okay.
And it does relate to immunity in very powerful way. Peter Attia and all these guys who are biohackers, who are talking about the goal of living to 100 and being what they call a kick-ass 100-year-old.
Yeah.
Not just a 100-year-old in assisted living and they're on oxygen. What's a kick-ass 100? And so Peter Attia, for those who don't know, is a very, very famous and very, very good doctor, medical doctor. Says, what would a kick-ass 100-year-old look like? They'd be able to, and he made a list of like 15 actions that you'd be able to take. You'd be able to lift a bag of groceries from the trunk of the car and take it into the house. You'd be able to do a farmer's carry, like where you carry, two baskets or just 2 things, and be able to walk to the corner with that. You'd be able to take a 20-pound luggage and put it over a 10-pound luggage and put it in the overhead compartment. That would be a kick-ass 100-year-old, right? So then Peter Attia, who's also a mathematician and a little obsessive compulsive, starts to make these Excel spreadsheets of what you would have to do each decade in order to be there at 100, because he knows how much muscle you lose, how much stability you lose, how much balance you use. So he came up with this. And it's just preposterously complex and difficult, in my opinion. I mean, he does something every day, some things twice a day, and it's this much training for this and this, so that you would be able to maintain 60 or 70% of your abilities by the time you're 100. Okay. And, they do cold plunges. They do all these things which have tremendous health benefits. So researchers recently said, this is a great idea, but why don't we talk to some actual kick-ass 100-year-olds and see what they actually do? Mm-hmm. What do kick-ass 100-year-olds? There are kick-ass 100-year-olds in the world. Let's observe them. What lessons can we learn? So they go to Sardinia, which is one of the 5 blue zones. Now, Sardinia happens to have the highest population of 100-year-old men in the world. So they watch them and they observe them. And they come away with 3 lessons. And again, this is a little tongue-in-cheek, but there's a gem of genius and wisdom in every one of these three. So watching Sardinia, they said, okay, the three best things you can do if you want to be a kick-ass 100-year-old is, number one, live in a place where there's lots of stairs. Now, if you've ever seen pictures of Sardinia, you can't walk out to get a carton of milk without walking. It's like this gorgeous city in a hill, and there's tons of, you have to walk everywhere. So the lesson there is walk every day constantly. That was lesson number one. Lesson number two, most of these guys are shepherds. So what do they do all day? They go out in nature with sheep. And the second lesson was spend as much time as you can around gentle animals. Now think about this, guys, for 1 second. What information do you get from being out in nature, from being near the ocean, from being around gentle, sweet creatures? What do you think is being activated? Your parasympathetic nervous system. You're not in sympathetic mode. You're not running to catch a train or getting a kid to soccer. You're in an incredibly relaxed healing mode all the time. You ever met a sheep or a goat? I mean, they just instantly, soften you.
A dog.
A dog could, yeah. I mean, you can adapt this. Obviously, we're not shepherds. We're not going to go out. But the point is, spend as much time in parasympathetic mode as you can. And here's the third lesson. And it's number one with a bullet. It's so far above the other two that it's like in real estate where they say, what are the most three important things in real estate? What are the answers? Location, and location. This is the location of health. You ready?
Ready.
Make your friends and family your number one priority.
Yes.
These guys, they sit around in the afternoon, they talk to each other, they share their feelings, they laugh. There are these pictures of them, these old men, and they're ha ha ha, and they're talking and they're sharing their feelings. There are no old people's homes. They're all integrated into the community. They all have Sunday night dinners. They do gardening together. Whatever they do, they help each other. There is a social network there that is like steel cables. And this finding has been duplicated in what's called the happiness study. It's going on. It started at Harvard, 4 generations. There have been 4 directors of the study. It started in the 1930s. It's still going on today. The current director just wrote a book about the findings of the past 4 generations, that they have studied these populations to see what happens to them over the years and what did they do. Which ones lived long and what did they do? Which ones died early? What did they do? Number one predictor of long life and happiness, family and friends, social networks. People may not remember this, but I urge you to Google it and look it up. The Rossetto phenomenon. The Rossetto phenomenon was an incredible story that happened in the early part of the 20th century. There is a place in Pennsylvania called Rossetto. It is a hard scrapple town. Everybody who lived there worked in the mines. The most difficult, environmentally horrible thing that you can imagine doing 7 hours a day in the mines. They ate the worst food. They all smoked. And one day, and this is a true story. This is how the Rossetto phenomenon came to be discovered and researched. There are books written on it. 2 doctors from adjoining counties were having a beer at a bar. And one of them, what kind of patients are you seeing? How about heart disease over there? Yeah, it's a funny thing. We don't have any. He said, you don't have any heart disease? Well, can't measure it. So I almost never see it. What? Everybody smokes. Everybody's in the mines. Everybody's eating lard or whatever they thought was bad food at the time. So eventually, researchers started to descend on Rossetto to figure out what the F is going on. And the collective wisdom of the researchers, the prevailing belief now is that what protected the people of Rossetto, these were immigrants. They all came from the same area of Europe. They had, similar kind of hard scrapple kind of, resilience. They were the closest knit community anybody had ever seen. Wow. They did everything together. They gardened, they square danced, whatever they did, it was communities. The old people were integrated into the society. Nobody felt irrelevant. And they believe to this day that social network somehow balanced out all these risk factors that these people were doing. So when people, to come back to the immune system, when I was getting YouTube questions about, like, what do I do for immunity? It's a COVID, it's going to kill us. You know what I would tell them? Stop watching Facebook. Because the stress of that is what we're talking about here, is reduction in stress. These guys that are taking sheep out into the beautiful hills of Sardinia, what's happening to their stress levels? Zoom. There was a book that came out a few years ago called Cured, C-U-R-E-D. Jeffrey, I forgot his name. He was chief of medicine at one of the big New England hospitals, still is. And this was a medical doctor with impeccable credentials who also happened to have a master's degree in divinity from Princeton. So he's not anti-spiritual, but he's also science. People started asking him about these so-called miracle cures, like going down to Brazil. And there was a guy there, John of Brazil, a healer, and people were going and they were throwing their crutches away, all this stuff you hear. And these people would say to Dr. I don't remember his last name, I'll call him Dr. Jeffrey, you should investigate that. And he said, are you kidding? First of all, it's all bullshit. Second of all, even if I wanted to investigate it, I would be laughed out of Harvard or wherever it is that he goes. I mean, nobody would take, that is just, it's not going to, no way. And he had an oncology nurse who had been with him for 20 years that he had the greatest respect for. And she said, you know, Jeffrey, I think there's something to, I think you should look into this. There's really something here. So against all of his instincts, he decided to investigate. And he looked at all these cases of people who had been supposedly miraculously cured or put cancer into remission, or, you know, the tumor disappeared and all of this stuff. And he did a big investigation of this. And his conclusion was 98% of this is exactly what I thought, it's bullshit. But 2% isn't. And he found cases where they could document with x-rays or MRIs a tumor, and 6 months later it's gone. This was not hearsay. This was in the medical records. They all wrote it like we don't understand why it happened, but it did. And here's the x-rays, here's the MRI, here are the imaging studies. And he thought to himself, even if this only happens in 1% of the cases, could we possibly learn something from what these folks did? We study hugely high performers, 1 in a million type people like, I don't know, Magic Johnson and Bill Gates, or who, bad example, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, these miraculous performers, brilliant people who just soar. We study them to kind of find out what their habits are and what they do. Maybe we can learn something from them. Michael Jordan used to, you know, practice basketball after the game, or what can we learn from him? And what turned out to be true, in every case he was able to identify of remission or cure from something that was supposed to be incurable, there was one commonality. Every one of these people, and some of them were uneducated, they didn't, you know, there was no, well, I'm going to do this to stimulate that. No, they just did this. Every one of them made life changes in which they were able to get rid of toxic relationships, toxic jobs. Some of them thought they only had 6 months to live, so they said, fuck it, I'm going to do, you know, this, and I'm going to go off to paradise and just be in the sun. And what he found to be the single predictor was that these people had gone from living most of their life in sympathetic mode to most of their life in parasympathetic mode. Now, just for those who don't know what that is, the autonomic nervous system has two divisions. Sympathetic is get up and go, it's fight or flight. And the other one is rest and digest. Parasympathetic is, So that's the one where all the healing takes place. And these people who had not spent much time there were now living there. And that's what happened in Sardinia. They were living in parasympathetic. This is what cured these people, the very few people who miraculously got cured from things. And his theory, because we can't prove it, is that when they were in this kind of sympathetic mode all the time, stressed all the time, not sleeping, everything like that, their immune system doesn't work well. And when they got into parasympathetic mode, it was like the immune system says, okay, now what's the problem here? So my message, if there is one, my take home here is one of the best things you can do for yourself is de-stress and relax and smell the roses and be present and engage with your family and friends. People don't think of that as a health strategy, but dude, the research is black and white on this. This is what you want to do. And that's why I would tell people who were saying, what should we do? What should we do? I said, first of all, turn off Facebook. Because all the stress you're taking in is eating up the vitamin C that you're buying out of Costco. You got all that vitamin C and it's being eaten up by your Facebook feed. Turn it off. So that's my message. What do you want to know how to boost immunity? Your natural immunity? Relax. It's not the only thing to do. Obviously, somebody can listen to this and say, oh yeah, well, I'm not supposed to do anything else. No. What I'm saying is start to pay attention to your mental states. Start to pay attention to your bodily states. And if you can engage that and find a way to access that, you will be helping your immunity and you will be helping your health.
Jonny tells a damn good story, doesn't he, Terry?
I had more questions, but I'm like, I don't want to ask them. I mean, I want to end like this. That should be what the last.
It's a good place to end. It's a good place to end because I think it is really the take home you want to leave with people. When I see clients, here's a secret to why my clients always feel better after sessions with me. I do these one session kind of power strategy things where we really take a look at everything. Almost all of them come to me because they have cholesterol tests that they don't understand, or they have some markers or things that they, really want to work on, and their vitamin D level is this, and their cholesterol is. And I wind up always, because I'm functionally trained in functional medicine, functional nutrition. I believe everything, connects to everything else. So I always wind up asking, "What's your family like? What do you do all day?" And then they wind up. Like, oh my God, these two great kids. And every Sunday we do this, and their face lights up. And I go, you know what that is? That's the biggest deposit you can make in your health bank. Forget all these test results. It's not that they're not important. It's not that we shouldn't work on them. But do more of that. Because that's what's going to make you healthy and long-lived.
Love that.
Fantastic. It's so
Doc.
true, too.
It's always been an honor and a pleasure. It's so great to work with you, but also thank you.
Oh God, this was my favorite interview.
I'm gonna go hug my kids and my wife and my dog.
Dude,
And
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I start every day. I make out with the dog. I would come over. I give him a hug.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's for you as well.
Yeah.
Jonny, thank you, buddy.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for everything.
Jonny. That was
Talk to you
fantastic.
soon. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Crackin Backs Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Crackin Backs Podcast. Catch new episodes every Monday. See you next time.